Hey guys, how you doing? So, somebody asked me to talk about entrepreneurship business. They said, Uncle Steph, please talk about business. Teach us about business. Okay. So, I'm known as the nerd. I've been coding for 30 years, but I've actually been in business longer, like 35 years. So I'm going to give you just a brief overview of some of the most important lessons I learned over the last 3 decades about starting a business. And I'm a bootstrapper, meaning I didn't raise a ton of money. I never raised money. I've been offered, but I always did it on my own. There's pros and cons to that. Sometimes it was a good thing and sometimes it was a bad thing. Anyway, so in this video, I'm just going to give an overview. And if enough people like it and share it, blah, 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 comment, I could do 5 books on it based on personal experience. Me being a social media guy and trained in being in the educational space, that's very new for me. That's the second half of my career at best. I was in the pet products business for years. I imported rare fish for years. I distributed rare fish. I used to distribute frozen foods for the fish industry. I'm not talking fish you eat, talking fish for aquariums. Back in the 90s, when I did all this stuff, aquariums were much more important. A lot of people had fish tanks, you know? So we used to import fish from Africa, South America, Asia, a little bit from Europe even, strangely enough. And then we would sell them to pet stores, zoos, public zoos, aquariums, public aquariums that had clients, and of course collectors. People would collect rare fish. We dealt with rare species, very high-end species for several years. That's lesson number 1. When you're getting into a business, you want to find a niche. The worst thing you can do is go into an established industry where everybody is neighbor is doing it. You want to find some product or service that's very unusual. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard to compete, because in those situations, typically, where you're in a business like, selling chickens or something, everybody's neighbor is doing it. The people in that business are not making much money because there's so much competition. So the chicken sellers, I don't know, they might be making 10%. Not even, forget about 10%. I remember I knew a chicken guy. I knew a guy had a big a $50 million chicken business in those days. So it's probably, in today's money, I guess it'd be a $100 million business. So substantial business. And he told me on a good year, they would make 3 to 4%. Oh, okay, 4 to 5%, never mind. Strangely, I remember from all those decades ago. And on a good year, on a bad year, they'd make 1 or 2%. So very tight margins. So, they did 50 million in sales, but if you're only making 5% profit, net profit overall, 5% of 50 million is about $2.5 million profit. Pretty good. But you have to turn over $50 million in product to make, $2.5 million. You have to be very careful about what you do. That means that you have to be really efficient with your business practices and your business cycles. Anyway, that's the first lesson for you. As I said, I've been doing this for 30, 35 years, and my parents had companies. So I've been surrounded by business for 40 odd years, more than that, 44, 45 years. Because we'd sit around at the dinner table and they'd be talking business all the time. Anyway, so I'm in this video, I'm going to teach you, I guess I would say, the top lessons that I've learned over the decades. And again, if you like and comment on this, I'll do more. One of the things I like to do is do little nature walks. Why? Because this reduces your cortisol, which is good for your sleep, it's good for your health, and it's just very relaxing. So instead of being at my desk recording this video, I'm doing it in the park. So lesson number 1 about business. There's a big difference between being a business entrepreneur, and somebody who works in a corporate environment. It's a whole different game, whole different personality type. People who succeed in established corporations. So let's say we get a job working at some Apple or Microsoft or I don't know, wherever, any company. It doesn't have to be a tech company. So you go work at ExxonMobil. People who thrive in the corporate environment are a different mindset than people who thrive as entrepreneurs. You see, entrepreneurs have to break the eggs. Entrepreneurs have to be free thinkers. They have to be willing to buck conventions. They have to be willing to ignore the way things are done and to change the way things are done. This is the opposite of somebody who works at a corporation. Essentially, entrepreneurs at the end of the day are very results oriented, meaning what they do and how they operate and the decisions you make as an entrepreneur have to have positive results. Whereas people who thrive in corporations have to follow process. Corporations are all about process adherence, and entrepreneurship is all about breaking eggs and results. The results are the king for entrepreneurs. Process is king or queen for corporations. Very different mindset, very different mindset. So you could have somebody who rises to the ranks and becomes a president of a corporation, and they would be horrible entrepreneurs though. They would not be able to start a business. They're just good at process. So for example, look at Apple. Apple, big company, super successful. Steve Jobs, the founder, the guy who broke the eggs, he dies. The guy put in his place is Tim Cook, who is a process guy. He was big at Apple because he made sure the trains arrived on time. He basically made sure processes at Apple were super efficient. That was his role. That was his strength. That's his capability. I'm not criticizing him. That's where he's good. But not too much innovation there, right? So you think about, since Steve Jobs has passed away, nothing has come out of Apple, right? Because it's been taken over by the corporate people, all the entrepreneurial people, well, Steve Jobs, that entrepreneurial spirit that allowed Apple to innovate and to do things that were totally weird. You know, they were Apple computers. And how did they break out? They broke out with the iPod, a music player. And then they broke out with a phone. Then they broke out with an iPad. You know, it's like, and they defined product categories, you know? You don't see that now. They tried with the Vision Pro, but it was like, it was a beta launch in my opinion. But anyways, that's it. Again, it's all about psychology. So I guess the second lesson here is that the difference between success in corporate and success in entrepreneurship, you have to understand yourself. If you are somebody who likes process, adhering to steps, you worship credentialing, meaning, oh, I need this degree, I need that. That is the opposite of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs need results. It's like the difference between MMA fighters and traditional martial artists. MMA fighters, started with the UFC, and any pro fighters, people who do competitive full contact combat sports, they're very results oriented. Your accolades, your skills, your competency is dictated by whether you win fights. Whereas traditional martial arts, a lot of your perceived competency is dictated by whether or not you got the ranking. The ranking has been bestowed upon you by the elder statesmen of your style. As we all know, the traditional martial artists are typically not very competent fighters. They don't know how to fight. I know, I did it for 20, 25 years, martial arts, both traditional and non-traditional, and combat sports. And I'm telling you, it's very, on the bounds of probabilities, people who do combat sports are far more capable fighters, like 98% of the time, than people who do traditional martial arts. It's just the facts. And why? Because traditional martial artists are kind of like corporatists, where they are bound to process. Oh, you got to pass this. You got to do this form. You got to punch in this exact way. You got to learn these techniques. But they don't put them to practice, except in maybe very controlled fake environments. Whereas combat sports, you got to learn your technique and stuff. But it's really about getting in the ring and fighting. Same thing with entrepreneurship. So understand that you have to have a different mindset. You have to have a different psychology as an entrepreneur. You have to be able to break the eggs. You have to be able to figure out where you could do something different to find an opportunity. So yeah, that goes back to niching down. You have to you don't want to get in the chicken business, right? It's very, very difficult to make money there because everybody in his neighborhood has been doing that. Same with real estate. People are getting killed now with the Airbnbs because anybody in his neighborhood, if you have money, you can buy a house and you can rent a house, And the problem with buying and renting houses, the problems there is, the business problems is just it's process. It's being able to do it efficiently and effectively. There's no innovation there necessarily. So I wouldn't be getting into that business. I had a couple rental buildings down in Texas. We sold them out 2 years ago because we saw the writing on the wall in terms of where that whole industry was going. So right now, I'm not bullish on real estate, at least in North America for a while. All right, next lesson, business. A business can only go bankrupt when it runs out of money, not out of ideas, runs out of money. So you have to protect your capital, your cash. You have to protect it. You got to only spend when you absolutely have to spend it. And when you do spend money to help your business out, you have to be in a position where if you lost everything, you lost all that money, it won't affect your lifestyle. One of the big mistakes I see people make is they figure, oh my God, my business idea is so amazing. It's so amazing. I'm the best. This is the best. We're going to be bigger than Facebook. I talked about this in another video. Guy in a startup I knew, they thought they were going to be bigger than Facebook, and so they went under within shortly after launch. So yeah, their business failed. He's always been a failure. So now he's a business consultant. Beware the consultants with no real track record, It's like those social media guys who all they've ever done is sold courses on how to be successful in business, but they never had any other business. We see a lot of that, by the way. So you don't want to spend money unless you absolutely have to, right? So whatever you got to think about spending money as an entrepreneur is like going to the track, the racetrack. The old gambler's lesson is don't go to the track with money you can't afford to lose. Business entrepreneurship is like that as well. You're going to be taking a lot of stabs at things. You're going to be attempting many different business types until you find something that's successful. You might be lucky. You may get it the first try, but most of the time you won't. So you have to go in there. It's like throwing punches or jabs. You don't want to overcommit because that's how you get knocked out. So you don't want to overcommit with your financial obligations, investments, and businesses. So you got to be very careful. Spend, but if you lose it all, poof, poof. You lose it all, you can still keep going. Make sure you do that. Now, one way to get around that is to raise money. So you spend other people's money, you share the risk, you share the reward, of course, and so you can approach things that way. Certain types of businesses require a lot of capital expenditure up front. I'll translate that into non-nerd. Certain businesses you have to put up a lot of money to buy the equipment or set up, the infrastructure to even start. Other types of businesses don't. We live in a golden age, though, now. I started my first business when I was 18 years old, back in the 90s. And then, because of technology, because I could print at home, one of the big technological advantages at the time is for the first time, you didn't have to go to a printing press and print up 10,000 labels. You could go and print up 500 labels. It was more expensive, but it was still economical. So you could get to market with product with a lot less of a production run. This was a huge new advantage at the time. My first business had nothing to do with technology. I had jarred products. And so I would go laser print these labels, stick them on. They were good enough. They're a good way to try out. So if you wanted to launch a product, we just have to come up with 500 units, for example. We create 500 labels. Prior to that technology, you'd have to print up thousands and thousands of labels. So when you launched a product prior to that, it was very expensive. You could fail like with a lot, having spent a lot more money. So that technological advantage made what I was doing possible. Then the web came around that had more advantages. Today, though, it is the best time in history to be a small business owner, to be a startup. The best time in history because you have AI. AI, super cheap marketing with social media, super cheap video production because, I'm using a very inexpensive point and click. You use your iPhone and you can shoot nice, competent videos and hosted it dirt cheap. But now we have AI. I think now with AI, we're already starting to see, you're going to have hugely successful businesses that will pop up like this because AI allows you to have the equivalence of the economies of scale without having to have a big organization. See, the reason you have huge companies is because you need so many employees to execute on the product that you're offering the service. This is gonna change. You're not gonna need so many people already. You're not gonna need so many people to be able to bring things to market. I've spoken to some entrepreneurs who, like I spoke to somebody a month or two ago, and they were saying they brought a product to market in like 2 months, a mobile app, and without AI, it would have taken them over a year to build, but they're able to do it in just a couple of months because of AI. And AI continue to get more successful. This is not a risk. This is an advantage. This is an advantage. All of a sudden, projects that only a Facebook or an Apple or a Microsoft could approach, now you and 2 friends or just you may be able to approach these things because of AI and all the other things I talked about. So it's a huge advantage. So what's the lesson here? The lesson here is to take advantage of the new technology. Look at AI. Like if you want to be an entrepreneur, what I would do now is I would spend my time looking at AI, looking at what it can do. Really get your head wrapped around that space. When the web was coming around in 1993, 94, I had one of the very first websites up in the world, period. Maybe I was one of the first 4,000 websites. I had one of the first websites that had photos in the world, by far, easily rather. And because I wrapped my head around this whole internet thing and the web thing, which was bleeding edge at the time, I was able to take advantage of certain opportunities. I wasn't looking backwards, I was looking forward. So AI is like that too. There are lots of opportunities, but how do you identify these opportunities is by... So you want to become fully aware of the AI landscape. You want to understand it like the back of your hand so that so this will allow you to see opportunities to leverage this new technology in ways that you wouldn't otherwise. So there you go. If you were concerned about AI, you see it as a doom. I don't. I see it as a big advantage. In fact, I am now in discussions about whether or not I'm going to become a co-founder of an AI startup. We'll see. We'll see. All startups are high risk. But this is where the money is. This is where the money is. Get into that. That's why I do have my coding courses and so forth. And foundational coding is still valuable because for you to work with the AI, you have to know what you're doing if you're going to do it effectively. Just 200, 250 hours and get you up to speed with enough coding, and then you could just jump into the whole AI stack. That's what I recommend now. The hardest thing about starting a business, getting business for most people, is the psychological pressures of starting a business. Business is a profession, if you will. It's a track in life that is inconsistent, variable. You don't know what's going to happen next week or next year. It's not stable. And a lot of people can't deal with that uncertainty. So that's like the number one thing. You're going to have to learn to deal with the psychological pressures that most people experience. There are things you can do in terms of, having the right perspective, being tactically sound, and how you implement, don't overreach with investments, having patience, having many irons in the fire, having many opportunities being executed, and believe it or not, getting healthy, low body fat percentage, eating natural foods, sleeping well, drinking lots of water, building muscle, heavy weights. This all helps with stress reduction. And for most people, business is very stress-inducing lifestyle. It's also very rewarding. As I said, I haven't had a job since I was like 19 years old when I was a bouncer in a nightclub. And I was able to retire at 30, 32, forget now. And then after 10 years of just getting coffee and going for brunch, I decided, okay, I'm bored of this. I started getting back into it. Now the thing is, when you get out of it for 10 years, it's hard to spin up your brain again to get back into it. So what I recommend is that if you're looking at getting into business, you want to try to find something that's fun for you. It has to be fun, because there's going to be tough times, and if you don't enjoy what you do, like I like doing this, what I do now with the videos and all. I'm doing social media brand deals. We're doing brand deals with some of the biggest brands in the world now. I'm doing some pretty substantial deals. And, but it's fun for me. This is not work. This is fun. So, when there are headaches that come about, it's not a big deal, because, again, it's when if you do martial arts, you love fighting, it's going to be some tough times in the ring. But if you enjoy yourself, you keep doing it anyway. Anyway, that's it. I hope you found this video useful. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. As I said, I'm known as a coder guy, and I've been writing code for decades, but I've been a business operator, entrepreneur for longer. And so I could write 5 books on the subject without doing any research at all, just off the top of my head. Tons of stories, and pretty funny ones too. Anyway, I hope this is useful. Let me know in the comments below. If you like my hat, give me a thumbs up. If you don't like my hat, give me 2 thumbs down. And that's it. Yeah, let me know. Cheers.